Hello, students. Today we're going to be working on Notes 11, and this lesson is solving quadratic equations by factoring. So you'll be finding that our goal is to get our equation to have parentheses, like what we see in problem number 1, where I have x minus 3 times 5x plus 8 equals 0. Now, some of our problems will not start off with parentheses, and so we'll have to do the factoring as we've been doing in your previous lessons in order to get the parentheses. Now, once we have those, we're going to take each parentheses and set it equal to 0. And this is the zero product property, which says if you have two things being multiplied, then and they equal 0, then one of those factors must be equal to 0. So we'll start off setting each parentheses. So in this case, I have the x minus 3 and the 5x plus 8. I'm going to set both of these equal to 0. So for the x minus 3, I'm going to solve that equation. I can add 3 to both sides of the equal sign, and that'll give me x equals 3. And then for my second equation, 5x plus 8, the other parentheses, I can subtract 8 to both sides of the equal sign. The 5x will come down, the 8's cancel. 0 minus 8 is negative 8. And then now this one, there's a number in front of the x, so I'll have to divide both sides by 5. Now that creates a fraction, but we're going to leave that answer as a fraction. X equals negative 8 over 5. Since there were two parentheses, if we were to multiply them together, we would have an x squared term, and that x squared indicates that we should expect at most 2 answers. And that's what we ended up with. We had 3 and then negative 8/5 as our 2 answers. And then you'll notice that I'm writing them in the answer blank in a solution set. So your solutions are 3 and negative 8/5, and it does not matter what order you write them in. Now, your second problem is a problem that has an exponent. So notice that we're still working with x squared terms. And so we will need to create the parentheses. So this problem has 5x squared minus 25x, only 2 terms in front of the equal sign. So I would first of all like to look for a greatest common factor. And that means that I should be able to divide both of these. And I can divide them both by 5x. So I'll put the 5x, and then remember that then I start a parentheses. So 5x squared divided by 5x is going to give me x. And then negative 25x divided by 5x, I'll end up with minus 5. And then remember to bring down equals 0. Now, we said that we want to set each factor equal to 0. And usually those factors are seen with parentheses. But in this problem, this 5x doesn't have a parentheses, but it is a factor that multiplies and is a possibility to equal 0. So I want to set 5x equal to 0. And then I also want to do x minus 5 and set that equal to 0. solving 5x equals 0, I can divide both sides by 5, and that will give me x equals, and 0 divided by anything is 0. So one of my solutions is x equals 0. On the other factor, I had x minus 5. I can add 5 to both sides of the equal sign, and the 5's will cancel, and that will leave me with x equals, and then 0 plus 5 is 5. So again, I had an x squared term, and I ended up with 2 solutions. So 0 is one of those solutions, and 5 is the other. So 0 and 5 are my 2 solutions to this quadratic equation. So notice that it did not start with parentheses. I had to do my factoring, which in this case was to divide out a greatest common factor in order to create the parentheses. Now, our next problem has 3 terms, but notice that I have this sentence that we need to get the equation equal to 0. We cannot do any of this work until we get this step number 1 completed of setting the equation equal to 0. So on our problem number 3, I have x squared minus 11x equals negative 24. I will need to move the 24, or in other words, do the opposite. So since it's negative, I'm going to add 24 to both sides of my equal sign. Now I'm going to draw a line as a separator so that you can see that equal sign. So notice that the 24 does not have an x, so it's not a like term with any of these. So instead, I'm just going to have to write them out, x squared minus 11x, and then plus 24. Now I have my equal sign, and negative 24 plus 24 is 0. So now I've got my equation equal to 0, and I can go from there to where I'm supposed to identify A, B, and C. So A is the number in front of the x squared. That's going to be a 1. B is my number in front of x. Remember to put the sign. That's negative 11. And C is 24. So I'm going to fill in my chart because I have 3 terms. So A times C is 24. And B is negative 11. So I'll think of what multiplies to 24. I have 1 and 24. That does not add to negative 11. I have 2 and 12. That's not going to give me 11. 3 and 8. Now there's my possibility. So 3 times 8 is positive 24. But I need for it to be negative 11 when I add. So if my signs stay the same as each other, so negative 3 times negative 8, I still get 24. But when I add negative 3 and negative 8, I get negative 11. And so this is my pair that will multiply to 24 and add to negative 11. So just as we've been doing in your previous lessons, we'll have x squared and then use our numbers that we have found. So negative 3x minus 8x, and then bring down the plus 24 and continue to remember to put equals 0. We'll do the cut line. We can divide by x. And so we'll put x and then start a parentheses, and we'll have Inside that parentheses, x squared divided by x gives us an x. We have a minus sign here, and then the x's cancel. We'll have our 3. Now, for our next division, we can divide both of these by -8. So we'll bring down the -8, start a parentheses. -8x divided by -8 is x. And then 24 divided by -8 is -3. Now, that equals 0. Remember, we're factoring. So we have our common factor of x minus 3. And if it's still helpful to you to cancel out the x minus 3's, you can. And then your other parentheses is x minus 8, and then equals 0. So now I'm going to finish my work right here. I'm going to set each parentheses equal to 0, starting with x minus 3 equals 0, and then x minus 8 equals 0. So I'm going to solve individually. I can add 3 to both sides of my equal sign and end up with the 3's canceling there to give me x equals 3. And then for my other one, I can add 8 to both sides of the equal sign. So my 8's will cancel, ending up with x equals 8. Once again, I have 2 answers. I have the 3 and the 8 that are both solutions of that equation. But none of that could have happened until I got the equation equal to 0. So you always have to be sure that you do that. All right, and then we have one application, and I am encouraging you to do this application. We have not really concentrated very much on these, and it does show you where you might use these, at least a little bit of an idea. So we read it. It says the area of a rectangle is 20 square inches. So notice that I've drawn a rectangle and I have a statement area equals. And so I could go ahead and put 20 since it's 20 square inches. And then it says the length of the rectangle is, so I'm going to underline, length is 3. So I'm going to write a 3 above. And then less than, that would be, less than would be subtraction. So let me draw a subtraction sign there. And then twice the width, twice means 2, and our width, I've used a W to represent the width. So the one thing I have to correct on this is when it says less than, I have to translate backwards. So my equation for the area, for the length is, so length equals, translating backwards, I would start with 2W minus, and then the 3. Now, my equation for area is length times width. I'm actually going to do the width first. So the width, W, times the length, which I'm going to put in parentheses, 2W minus 3, and then equals the area, which is 20. All right, so I have to get my equation equal to 0, and to do that, I'll also need to remove this parentheses because those parentheses don't help me until I get the equation equal to 0. So I'll need to distribute the w. So we're going to do some multiplying. And so w times 2w is 2w squared. And then w times negative 3 would be negative 3w. And then I'll have equals 20. I can subtract 20 from both sides of the equal sign. And notice that I do not have like terms. So I'll just write 2w squared minus 3w minus 20 equals, and then these cancel to give me 0. And now I've got it equal to 0, and I've got it in order. My A is 2, my B is negative 3, and I have an extra mark there I'm going to fix. And then my C value is that negative 20. Notice that I'm including those negative signs. So now this should look familiar. I'll be filling in my chart. So looking at what multiplies to A times C. Well, 2 times negative 20 is negative 40, and then adds to B, which is negative 30. So if I think about 40, I have 1 times 40. I have 2 times 20. Nothing's adding to negative 3 yet. 3 does not work. I have 4 times 10. Still not getting negative 3. 5 times 8. Now, if I make one of these two negative, and it needs to be the larger one, if I make the 8 negative, 5 times negative 8 will give me negative 40, and 5 plus negative 8 will give me the negative 3 that I need. So I'm going to rewrite this 2w squared, but then split and use my 5 and negative 8. So plus 5w minus 8w, and then continue on with minus 20 equals 0. Doing the cut line to separate, I can divide my first two terms only by w. And then when I do my parentheses, 2w squared divided by w is 2w. Here my w's cancel to get plus 5. Now I'm going to need to divide by as big a number as I can, and they're both negative. Both these will divide by negative 4. So I'll bring down my negative 4 and then do my dividing. Negative 8w divided by negative 4 is 2w, and negative 20 divided by negative 4 is positive 5. Notice that I have the matching parentheses as we've been doing. So now I'll take that matching parentheses, 2w plus 5, and if I want to mark that out, my other parentheses is w minus 4. I'm going to have those equal to 0. So now I'm ready to put each parentheses equal to 0. I'll start with the 2w plus 5, and then finish off with w minus 4 equals 0. So solving, I can minus 5 to both sides of the equal sign, and that will leave me with 2w. The 5's cancel. 2w equals negative 5. Divide by 2, Now I get a fraction that I want to leave. So -5/2. And then my other parentheses, w minus 4, I can add 4 to both sides of the equal sign. My 4's cancel, and I end up with w equals 4. Now, my solutions are both of these numbers. So one of them was negative 5/2. And my other solution was the 4. But when it comes down to this word problem, it doesn't make sense to have a negative number as a length or a width. So I'm going to not consider the -5w as an answer to this problem where it asks for the width and the length because it is negative. So instead, I'm going to use the w equals 4. Well, my w was the width. So when it asks about the width, that would be 4. And then I want to use the units. And since we were talking about inches, this would be 4 inches. Now, as far as the length it said was this expression. So taking my 2 times my w and then subtracting 3. Well, my w was that 4. So I've got to do 2 times 4, which is 8, minus 3, and 8 minus 3 gives me 5, and my units would be the same, 5 inches. So we have 4 inches and 5 inches as the width and length of this rectangle. So there you have the solutions to 4 equations done by factoring. This will be homework 11. It is an Alex assignment. Please show complete work on your work page.